Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome, everybody, to the House of the Unusual podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pavlansky. With me, as always, is owner of House of the Unusual, Eddie Guevara. Along with us tonight is the one, the only, world-famous hypnotist, Michael Mezner.
And now with the introduction to our friend Mike Mezner, the legendary monster guy, hypnotist, world-renowned, works from Las Vegas and every part of the world. So, Mike, I think you're the authority to ask questions like this. Why do you think, explain to us how monsters have fashioned the way we think today, the way we became collectors as kids, how it fashioned mail order ads. Why don't you start the story from the beginning, Mike? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, Eddie, the thing is that you start back with the written word, back with as long ago as Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, and of course Bram Stoker and Dracula. All those were very influential throughout history. But of course, what really I think started the whole monster mania had to be the early days at Universal. And that's, of course, what we remember of what Frankenstein looked like, how Frankenstein acted, how Dracula acted, the stories behind them. All of that came really from Universal. And Universal was really influenced initially by, of course, the German Expressionist era, where we had Dr. Caligari, Metropolis, all of those, which I know you love robots, so the robot in Metropolis is very cool. A lot of the German Expressionist era films and Karl Freund, cinematographer, came over to Universal, and then they started making the movies that we're familiar with Frankenstein the way we love Frankenstein, and Dracula, and ultimately the Wolfman in the 1940s. And I think the reason they catch our imagination is for many reasons. I mean, the stories are great, obviously. That's why they started out as, Frankenstein, Dracula, of course, started out as novels. So those novels were sold millions of copies through the years. The stories were fantastic, but then what Universal did with them really made them fantastic for us kids during the monster era. And of course, the rebirth in the 60s of the monster era, because seeing them that way, it opened everybody's imagination to what they were. So, when we look at the monsters, there's different levels. There's the beginnings of monsters, back, novels and the books. Then the German Expression era had the Golem and Dr. Caligari and all of that. Then when they jumped to Universal and created what we love today, the images of those monsters have become so iconic. I mean, we've seen them on, of course, our beloved Aurora models, all of this. Those all come from the Universal monster designs. And so we have to thank, master makeup artist Jack Pierce for creating Frankenstein design and all of that. And of course, the Wolfman and all of that. So, it comes from the creators of the writers. It comes from the creators of the artists, the filmographer, people, the directors, all of that. But also Jack Pierce really those looks that you and I fell in love with the monsters.
One of the things that you just made me reminded me of was the fact when we had Sarah Karloff in one of our earlier episodes. She actually said something that was very interesting, funny, which is like, she goes, we had no idea. She goes, when she was first invited to attend a Comic-Con type of thing or a convention, she had no idea. And, they went there thinking that nobody was going to show up.
Oh, wow.
She couldn't believe, the popularity of people coming up to them. And that's kind of how she became a convention goer,
Well, and her dad as an actor added to that makeup and brought it alive for us, But also the interesting thing about Karloff, he actually added to the makeup because he took out his dentures, so the dentures in his cheeks that made it so bizarre looking.
That's correct. And but the whole thing is how popular. But the whole point is that I guess when the 70s went by and early 80s, even the children of those monsters, like what Sarah was saying, didn't really realize how popular monsters still were in a lot of people's hearts. And that's what
Yes.
she was. I mean, her and I think I don't know if she mentioned in the show. It was an earlier show. I don't exactly remember, her words, but
Sure.
I do remember her saying I think somebody went with her. She was invited by Lon Chaney family, or she went
Right.
with.
Right.
But they went in, and they just couldn't believe the amount of people that were coming up to them to get autographs and stuff, and it was just very fascinating. And she says that's how I became so involved in.
Well, I think
The
the very first shows they were going to, I think it was Ron Chaney went with her along with Bella Jr.
That's
So
correct. They changed
yeah,
the right.
uh-huh. They're
And
nice people. They're all nice people, and they love their fans.
talking about monsters, one of the things I like the most and I find iconic is when I was a young kid, as I basically grew up and I was watching, which was a regular Sunday thing, Abbott and Costello.
Oh yeah,
I grew up in Manhattan. I would watch them every Sunday. And when they did Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, one of the main things that I could always remember was Dracula. And the way
yes,
Dracula was portrayed. So when I came across Five and Dime store back in the day, and I saw the Aurora model kit, I didn't think of the original Dracula from the 1920s, because at that time I really hadn't watched the original Dracula. I only thought of Abbott and Costello, and I didn't know what a model kit really was. I was like 6 or 7, so
sure, me
when
too.
when I heard the kid, but when I heard the kid and it made strange noises like leaves inside or something, I always wanted to know what the heck was inside the box. And since it was sealed,
Yes,
I had no idea. And I wanted it so bad. I remember the price was $1.49, for the
yes,
model
yes,
kit.
they were. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I bought that and took it home and I built it. And to this day, I could say that it's not. It is my favorite. The square box, not the
Oh
little
yes,
rectangle. The square box with the
right.
glow in the dark features of the
Yes.
Dracula model Aurora. That is my favorite, and I have several of them. I have one of the original box I bought as a kid. I still have, and I also have a box that I bought sealed of that same
Oh,
Dracula. And I had another one that I purchased, but I actually sold that one on eBay, a couple of $100. But the point is that particular Dracula was my favorite all time, and it
it's
still is to this
fantastic.
day. And well, the basic reason is that's what I was influenced, and my influence came from the Abbott and Costello. And then I realized as I was growing
Right.
up, anytime I looked at Dracula, it sounded like Bela Lugosi.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Count
Even today,
Morgana
when you look at
from
Reese. Oh yeah. Reese's Pieces. Reese's. It's always Lugosi Dracula voice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I was going to say there was when we were kids and we were in school, we had the Scholastic Book Club, right? And they
Yes, we
used to sell
did.
Dynamite.
Yes.
Dynamite was a famous magazine that back in the 70s, and I used to always
Yes.
order Dynamite. And inside they had a comic, and it was called Count. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the last name right, Morbida or Morbid. I think it was Morbid, and then Da. They used the word Morbid, and
Yes. Yeah.
Morbid. And I ordered a Flexi record one time. Well, actually, the Flexi record came inside one of the Dynamites, and when he talked, he was just like talking, Bela Lugosi. Oh,
Oh yeah.
you know, and so the influence was big. And then into the comic books, when you looked at this monster-sized monsters, and they sold the 6-foot Frankenstein and the 6-foot Dracula, you couldn't help but notice that it actually looked just like Bela and Boris Karloff.
Yeah, yeah. They always have the widow's peak and all of that. Well, Bela Lugosi, he really inhabited that role because he did it hundreds of times on Broadway before he ever was doing it in the movie. And what was crazy about it, when you look back at it now, is that they didn't want him to be Dracula. They originally was going to be Lon Chaney Sr., but then he died of cancer. And Conrad Veidt to be Dracula. And I'm sure he would have done okay, but you know what? They were foolish not to, right off the bat, choose Bela. In fact, they put him through so many ringers. They only paid him $500 a week to do that role. And it was like, wow, you guys really didn't treat him properly. And here he was, the ultimate Dracula they had in their hands. They were so lucky that they ended up using him, because I'm not so sure we would see all of this. We wouldn't have seen all these amazing models and everything. Had Bela Lugosi, just as had Karloff not played, Frankenstein. Same with Bela. If Bela played Dracula, I'm not so sure we'd have the icons we have now. So it's too bad that they were not respected. Well, Karloff more so was respected than Bela, but Bela was not respected by Universal at all in his time. And that's kind of sad, because when we think about all the happiness and joy we've got from watching Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein and all the other Dracula with him, it's a shame that he was never recognized to the height that he should have been in his life.
And that is really interesting that you said that, because one of the things I could see about it, especially when it came with Bela Lugosi, is that he not only did he become so iconic, and every Dracula after that kind of went back to the way he acted or what he said, but when you look at it, I mean, I'm surprised nobody in Universal maybe saw the film and realized the character, how good he was.
Yes.
And it's really sad to say what you're saying, because it's just crazy the way things actually turned out, with the fame of him and stuff.
Well, it is that he only got to officially play Dracula twice in his career. One was the very first movie in 1931, and the second one was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. He had a couple other films where he portrayed a vampire / like Dracula, like Armand Tesla in Return of the Vampire, but that was not for Universal. But other than that, he only played Dracula twice officially.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's so crazy. And
it is.
One of the things I could say, or that I like to say, is that when I was growing up, and like I said, when I went to the comic book and I would buy monster-sized monsters and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Anytime I found myself in Halloween, getting dressed, if I did a vampire role or if I did anything, you find yourself trying to imitate the voice, the Hungarian voice, But one thing I'm going to bring to your attention. I know that Bela was asked to do Frankenstein, and I know that he came out and he went to see his doctor, and he didn't, because he felt that somehow his actor activities or being an actor, portraying a dumb brute, was not in his cup of tea. But, when you look at her overall thing is, I don't know if that would have happened. If Bela Lugosi would have played Frankenstein, which I think he did in one of the films later, including Lon Chaney played Frankenstein, and I don't know if it was Son of Frankenstein or which one.
Bela actually played Frankenstein in Wolfman Meets Frankenstein.
Right, Wolfman.
Or Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, yeah.
Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. But I could tell you, overall, I don't think it would have been the same, because when he played that, he doesn't look like a great Frankenstein, like Boris.
No.
So if he would have played the role, I'm not sure if history would be like it is today.
I agree with you, Eddie, totally.
Right, because and Boris Karloff, the thing with Boris was just his voice. They used Boris Karloff's voice in so many things that I can think of today. Everything from sometimes Bugs Bunny. They used his voice, and he had that. Like, for example, there's I love when they play it. I don't know if it was Boris who actually used the voice in that, but when they did that cartoon with the monsters, it's like a clay figure cartoon. What is that called?
Rankin and Bass. I think it was called the Monster Mash, wasn't it? I may be wrong.
It's been a while. Like that. The voice is just that, but then for some reason, the voice of Frankenstein or the voice of Boris Karloff went in probably a couple, not just one, but a couple of cartoons where there was a mad scientist that spoke like him.
Yeah, and I think in the one you're talking about, the Rankin and Bass movie, I think he played Dr. Frankenstein in that, and I think the monster was just made noises. But I think that was Boris Karloff's voice in that. Yeah,
it could be, because I think it was done early in that. But one voice that I always echoed in my mind, I don't know but I think they tried to make it like his voice, was in the Flintstones.
Yes.
You have Len. Remember Len? That the guy was a bad scientist. I forgot.
Yes.
So we said, "Don't do it, Len." And the guy says, I have to, be a bad scientist. That sounds a lot like Boris Karloff,
I haven't thought about that in a long time, but that was funny. Yeah.
That was a funny cartoon. And like I said, I grew up all that. So, I watch them, and still today, whenever I get a chance, I sit down and I like to, get all the original Bugs Bunny, or, and just watch and stuff. And then I realize, especially with Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse, how each of the famous movie stars of the 50s, especially like the frog, what's his name? With the big lips, who played the frog in Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse. He goes,
Oh, yeah. Edward G. Robinson.
That's right, Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah.
He's one of those iconic figures.
Oh, yeah.
Where they use it, and then they also used in Bugs Bunny the guy with the big eyes. He goes, "Oh," he spoke like that too. What was his name too?
Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre.
Peter Lorre. That's correct, Peter Lorre. And and it's just to say that I think all of us, when we look at all the monsters and stuff, the reason we love monsters is not because Frankenstein is, but I think it brings us back to our childhood and the toys we liked.
Well, and I think also, I think, Eddie, that's true. But I also think that the core of why we like monsters as a child is they empower us, because we can see ourselves as the monster, and that it empowers us. Frankenstein, he was so misunderstood in the film, especially. And, he didn't mean to throw the girl in the water. That was a mistake. As kids, we make mistakes. And then we think of ourselves, well, we're sort of like Frankenstein, because we're misunderstood and we make mistakes. And, it's sad. But also it empowers us, because then at every Halloween, we can become Frankenstein, or we can become Dracula. And in doing so, we can empower ourselves for that one night, even though we're little kids and the world's not in our control. But for one night a year, we can be the monster and we can be empowered.
One of the things that people don't really say, like, well, back in the 70s, and it goes in what you're saying right now, there was so much mail fraud. Well, here's the thing. We know, and a lot of people wonder how people were so dumb to order the things. Well, when you look at ads, and again, going back to our childhood, back in the 70s and 60s, most schools, every class you were in, there was a 90% chance you had some type of bully in the class. Okay,
absolutely.
There was always one popular kid, and there was always one kid that would either tell you, "I'm going to meet you after school," or there was always somebody, right? So if you were like in the middle, which 90% of the kids were, you would then go to a comic book and you would read monster-sized monsters, scare the daylights out of your friends. And somehow those ads, when they portrayed them, even though it was going to rip off the person, because they were going to get a poster instead of an actual statue, or like in my case, build your own robot and stuff.
Yes.
It gave you the idea that you were going to overcome your fears by purchasing this product.
Yes.
So I think, having said that, a lot of the early mail order ads were geared to kids with that imagination. And the problem is that most kids in our life, all kids at one time, have some type of inner self where they fear something or another. And sometimes those ads fill those gaps, or maybe
absolutely
fear, they wanted to be somebody or greater, or like I said, one of the greatest things they do in advertising, especially in mail orders, they always promise you to have better health. You're going to be liked by, let's say, in a guy, women, or a woman liked by guys.
Yes.
And they make you, they go into your inner self, and they want to bring out of you what I guess what we feel. And so, I mean, I'm not using the correct words here, but you understand what I'm saying to you.
Well, it's just, Eddie, it's just like with the magic that you would buy out of those ads too, because you thought, oh, if I was a magician and I knew something the other kids didn't know, they would think I was really great, because now I can fool them, and I'm doing this magic, and I'm a magician. So now I have, some kind of not power over them, but I'm important. So it made you
important. Exactly. And then the second part to that is, when you waited for the product to come that you placed an order for, there was that anticipation where you would go to sleep and wonder when it was going to come.
Yes.
Sometimes it would go 3 to 6 weeks. Sometimes it was 6 to 8 weeks. And then when you finally got it, okay, sometimes your expectation wasn't up to par.
True.
But it's kind of like, let me put it this way. Let's say you're doing 100 miles an hour in your car, and you come to a certain stop, your motor's still revving up, but you come to a stop now. You're no longer doing 100, but your motor's still.
Yeah.
So when you had the hype and you were waiting all this time to receive the product, and you actually got the product since you had so much hype that you built up over all this weeks, you kind of like, you're like, you're looking at the product, but you're still kind of excited. So you really don't feel ripped off.
No.
And then when it does dawn on you 2 or 3 days later, you're like, you know what? Maybe I ordered the wrong product. I should check the other one and the other ad. Maybe that's real. And
well, I love getting them. I mean, I'm like you. I love them. I know you. I sell a hypno wheel still now, but that was one of my favorites when I got the hypno wheel and the lessons in hypnosis, and then of course I went on to become a hypnotist and tour the world. But also, I love the ones for martial arts. I got the one for judo. I got the one for karate. I remember there was a poster that I got that for the karate one that said the pressure points, and it had this guy that looked like a burglar, like the with the black mask, and that look, So, I mean, those things, once you receive them, yes, they were just a piece of paper and a little pamphlet, but in your mind, you're filled in the gaps, and you thought all of a sudden, man, I'm going to be able to fight people or protect myself. And in some ways you could. It wasn't that the information wasn't correct. It's just that it took a lot more training than you would assume it would. But, in the hypnosis wheel, same thing, opening the imagination, and it my imagination for the rest of my life. So they discount the power of those items.
One of my favorite YouTube videos, it's called the $1.25 Ghost. Now, originally when I ordered, it was $1. This guy, his name is Kevin Nolte, and I believe Kevin Nolte, he's a big time advertising guy for either the New Yorker, I forget what magazine he works in. So he goes under the $1.25 Ghost, and he goes on to explain how when he was a kid, reading Richie Rich, he went on to order the Ghost, and then he goes on to say he waited weeks, what looked like eternity, and then his mom came and said, don't put your expectations too high. So the conclusion of the video is, at that moment when a tear came out of his eye, he said, my future was destined where I wanted to become a marketer and feel and basically, what was the word he used on the thing? Make someone feel as preciously scammed as he was. Like, in other words, the joy he got, he wanted to have somebody else feel the joy that he just got scammed, and that made his future. And it goes back again. I got a letter from a guy, I guess not a few years ago, might have been like 2 years ago. And I think the letter came after the book Mail Order Mysteries came out, and he noticed me in the back, okay? And he wrote to me from Australia, I think. And in his letter, he writes me and says, hey, listen, I placed an order for your, I don't know if he said the moon monster. He ordered something from me.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the 7-foot ghost. And he said, I waited a couple of weeks, and this was also repeated to me by our buddy Todd, though, which was hilarious. He says, I waited for a couple of weeks, and just as I expected, I got crap in the mail. The same that I got back in the 70s. He says, but please don't take it this way. The reason I'm writing to you is because I wanted to thank you for bringing back such precious memories to me.
Wow. And
I framed the letter actually because I thought it was phenomenal. I go, wow, what an email. And then a few weeks later, he sent me, which I thought was ironic because he could have just told me to send it to him, about 6 joy buzzers and a few items from Australia, and he wanted me to sign it for them,
Well, I got to tell you, Eddie, I mean, your products are amazing. I mean, I'm not kissing your beep. I'm just saying that, for instance, your monsters, your 6-foot monsters, you've improved those to such a level that they're artwork. I mean, they're artwork. And, so when people order something from you now, they're not getting what we got when we were kids. They're getting keepsake and a beautiful piece of art to be framed and put on their wall. I was so impressed with both the Dracula and the Frankenstein. I mean, I couldn't imagine they would have looked so fantastic. And they're what I would have imagined receiving when I was a kid, but we didn't.
The funny thing about that is that I had them enhanced, basically. What happened is when I scanned the originals, I enhanced them to be more vivid, the color. But let me tell you, nothing blew my brain away more than when because I mentioned to you, I think that I get them all one order at a time. I get them,
Yes.
it's because they're not pre-printed and they get
Yeah.
printed if I get an order. But the printer that I used, I said one day, you know what? I'm sending all my customers all these posters, and they're super happy. They're giving me 5 stars on them. I
Oh
want to
yeah.
see what they actually look like because I had never really ordered for myself. So I went
Wow.
ahead and ordered one of each. And I'll tell you one thing: nothing blew me away more than the 7-foot Boney the Skeleton. When I actually looked at that Boney the Skeleton, and I looked at the the poster,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is nuts, man.
Well,
It's
it's also
7 feet
the
tall.
paper is so beautiful too. I mean, it's thick, beautiful paper, and then the glossiness to them. I mean, they're such a different level.
That's right. Well, that's what I'm saying. The company I use is just, I've never had a company do better work. And but I'm going to tell you one thing, that the level of that, and of that Boney the Skeleton is phenomenal. Now, I went with Dave, and we did a project, Dave Harversat from SS Adams. I did a couple of projects with him, and he's the one that, together with me, we did the Hypno Coin. We put out this thing, which is actually a haunted house, weather vane.
Oh, cool.
Where, in all honesty, it came out and it was such a pain that I kind of decided to discontinue that. We still have a couple that we're probably going to get rid of soon. But, we did the Hypno Coin, we did the Frankenstein. And the point I was going to say is when the Frankensteins came, and now one thing that people don't realize is when I had this stuff reproduced, okay, I had it scanned at parts.
Yeah.
And then David submitted it to a professional not copyright. Oh my God, I can't remember the name of those. The people that deal with graphic artists. I'm sorry.
Graphic artist, sure. Artist. Yeah.
And the graphic artist spent, according to what he told us, 17 hours putting it together. And here's one thing that people don't realize. The original is made on plastic. So the original is a piece of garbage, basically a garbage bag that has what they used to call polyurethane bag.
I remember. Yeah.
That has, and they used the word polyurethane, I guess, to deceive people because no one's going to figure it's a plastic poster.
Right.
What is polyurethane? Unless you look it up in a dictionary, you won't know. The whole thing is, not polyurethane, polyurethane.
Yes.
And so what happened is it's wrinkled. So the folded down version, if anybody looks at Mail Order Mysteries, they can see my original in there. You'll see it has a lot of wrinkles.
Wow.
Even though it's original, it has wrinkles. So the wrinkles come out, do 600 DPIs to get a really good exact copy.
Correct.
So to put that together was nuts.
Oh,
and
yeah, man.
We sent it out to China to get, we produced, a couple of hundred.
Sure.
And that's why it sells for less than the $149 that I sell the other monsters, because the cost was half the price,
And you're honest. You're an honest person. Yeah.
I'm not trying, because a lot of people say, well, you're selling the posters, eBay, and they want, well, you sell it to me, and they don't realize, one, the posters cost over $100 a piece.
Of course.
The eBay fees are easy, a little bit, almost $20. Then you have other fees. So what I'm really making on each poster is just enough to keep them there. And I
have to say that we were talking about the models and the original monsters in Universal. Those characters that you have on those posters, without going over copyrights of Universal, they faithfully recreate everything we love about those of Dracula and Frankenstein. They faithfully those images, and they're just a gem for anyone to have if you're a fan of them.
And the thing is that anybody who opens up a comic book will see them. Anybody who deals with famous monsters of filmland will see them. In fact, issue number 26, the one that has the outer limits on the outside cover, I think was the very first time ever that it was ever advertised, the 6-foot monster-sized monsters, and they're advertised in the actual back cover.
Right,
If you
right.
turn that magazine over, you're going to see the Dracula and the Frankenstein. Now, I'm going to tell you, and going back to this,
Yeah.
yeah, and I tell a lot of people, if you want to get the 6-foot Frankenstein, I'm sorry, the 7-foot green version,
Yes.
which, okay, why is it better? One, it's in a vinyl stock, which is almost like waterproof. Second, it's one piece. You don't have to put together two sections like the original.
Right,
Third, it
exactly.
looks phenomenal.
Oh, what,
Phenomenal.
and framed, it's
And if,
amazing. It's amazing framed. It's just
well,
amazing.
the thing with a lot of people don't say about frame is, and I say one of the ways to frame those things is if you go into, and this is a way for those that can't afford to frame them,
Sure.
go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get those moldings that they use for the bottom of your your house, what they call the moldings,
Yeah,
and try to get moldings and make a frame yourself.
you
And
can.
and that's
Yeah.
about the only way, because to be honest with you, to frame one of those posters, there was an individual, and I thought it was kind of funny. He bought 2 posters from me. He bought the Dracula and the Frankenstein. Okay. So
Yeah.
then after he purchased it, I think he lives in Brooklyn. Phenomenal person. He had them framed and spent like $1,400 to frame the 2.
Right. I know. It's about
$700.
$500. About
Yeah.
$500 a piece. Yeah.
It's actually a little bit over, depending if you put glass or not.
That's
So
right.
he framed them, and then after he put them up in his house, he realized that he couldn't open his kitchen door because it was
Oh,
going to
man.
be. So he calls me up and says, "Hey, I want to buy another set. I got this frame. I'm going to put them on eBay. I think he sold them on eBay for like $2,000." And he says, "I want to buy another set, but can you have them printed on like waterproof vinyl or something so that I can, I don't need to frame them?" And I said, "Sure." I forgot exactly what I did with those, but he got them, and the guy, I mean, he actually bought like 2 sets, and I got to tell you something. When I started selling those posters, I don't know, probably the early '80s, I must have sold quite over a couple of hundred sets. People were just, and I was the only one that was bringing them back again. So
Well, I got to
then,
say,
I went
they're just
ahead.
beautiful.
They are phenomenal. And then, of course, I added the Moon Monster, and I added the, the what do you call that one? The Zachary poster.
Oh, yeah.
That was done in Famous Monsters. Now, I did that because I knew Zachary, very good friend, and we spoke and all that. But one of the things I never brought up was the Vampirella, because Vampirella, that definitely copyrighted, had all this
Right.
stuff, and I didn't have any rights
I was going
to
to say
that.
something to you, Eddie. You brought up a memory for me when you were talking about the polyethylene or whatever that was. I bought something out of a comic. Remember the log cabin that would go over ended up going over a card table, actually.
The frontier cabin for $1.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
You could get 2 for $2.98, I think.
Yes, and it was made out of that polyethylene stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you put it over a card table. Mike, I don't know if you have any of those yet. I had one that I purchased many, many years ago, probably in 1991, 92, and I think I lost it in the fire. It might still be in one of my boxes. I don't know, because a lot of people don't realize that in 1995, there was a 5-alarm fire in the storage facility I had.
Oh, my gosh.
And I lost a bit, I would say about 60% of my original collection. And I got most of that collection purchasing stuff in Toy Shop magazine before eBay. And I continue going to flea markets and everywhere I could. And every time I found an original, I would buy it again. And throughout the years when eBay came on, that log cabin, there was the log cabin. There was also another one that was also made. I forgot the name of the other one. But that Frontier log cabin is so rare that I don't think I've ever seen one.
Wow. I don't have mine anymore, but boy, yeah, that's another one of those things that was not exactly how you thought when you ordered it, but when you got it, it was so cool to play with.
Well, you know what? And they always use made of 100% polyethylene, which what it did, it just like the 7-foot ghost. Now, I'll tell you what my regrets are, Mike. And one of the things, and I'm saying regrets is, when I was a kid, again, when we are talking about situations where, kids, they feel like they could get this extra power by ordering things and stuff.
Yes.
Faced at the time, growing up in Manhattan, obviously, kids, I came from Cuba at the age of 4, didn't speak English at the time. And a couple of times, of course, they said, we're going to wait for you after school, which was a common thing. So when I came across the 7-foot ghost that I ordered it because I thought it would give me this special power over them.
Yes.
And I think Kirk Damaris touched the bone or touched the heart on that when he did Flip, the little 5 or 7 minute film of a kid who has comic books. He gets beat up and he buys, the 7-foot monster that controls. Yep. Kirk used Frankenstein for a picture kind of in the thing, but it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Of what we're talking about. And the regrets that I have is that when I looked about and of course this, and every time I say this, Joe and Todd and everybody says take a drink, is the Monster Robot plants. I had an opportunity to purchase either the Melton Company one and the one from Abracadabra Magic Shop, which was located in New Jersey.
Right.
And again, when we say this, I'm going to bring something that a lot of people don't realize. And before I finish that story, is in the early 1980s, I had a magic shop. And after I closed down my magic shop, I figured I went to the courts in the area and tried to find out who used to own the original mail order companies. I came across the original owner, Lou Wise, who owned the Fun Factory, which was a mail order company in the late 60s, early 70s that was out of New Jersey.
Wow.
And there was also the Fun House, which was the one that sold $1 million in U.S. banknotes out of Newark, New Jersey. P.O. Box 1224, the Fun House. That was owned by Jack Aboff. The company in New Jersey was Lou Weiss. I tracked them down and called them on a Sunday. To fast forward, I wound up reopening the Fun Factory with Lou Weiss, and that was a childhood dream. And I ran my first full-page ad with Lou in 1992, 93 in DC Comics. So that's why I've said in the past that you can find in fact, and I think I mentioned this in the podcast in the past, is the first company that ever run a mail order ad was in 1938, Johnson Smith, in Action Comics number one.
Wow. Wow.
And the last company that ever run a mail order ad was Fun Factory under me in 1993. Prior to that and after that, no company has ever run that sells novelties. I'm talking about the jokes and magic.
I know. Yeah.
So going back to when I had that opportunity as a kid, going back to the original story, I came across the two ads. I had the ad from Abracadabra Magic Shop, and it had a Frankenstein-looking monster. It said, make this own monster you can own and control. Your friends will obey you. The way it was worded in my brain was a better ad than the one from Melton Company that showed a kid inside a robot contraction,
Yes.
And so my eyes were lured by the Frankenstein figure looking, and I ordered those. And the story that I regret is that, years later, it's been a 45, 46 year track down, and I've never come across those monster plans from the Melton Company. Where I've even rented a car and drove to Chicago in search of the original company. I've gone through Florida to everything, all the banks and the P.O. Box D and E were located for the Melton. Now, the Melton Company went under two names, went under Guaranteed Distributors, and they also went under Melton Company.
Wow.
I found the name of the guy. My search is all in a paper trail. Like I have all the records of all the contacts, every person I ever met, and, including where the post office was. And then my shock was that the post office for the Melton Company was 3 blocks away from where I stayed when I was 13 years old and didn't even know it was there. But anyway, the other regrets I have in life is that as I went on to do more research in the early 80s, I came across not the first company that I ordered the 7-foot monster ghost from was the Honor House, obviously. And the reason my Honor House has my favorite ad is because if you look at the ad from the Melton Company, Johnson Smith, and Honor House, I think because of the line artwork, gave me more to imagine. And I had a little friend, like everybody has a little friend that tells them everything. I had this little friend I grew up with that anything he told me, I believed,
Right.
And I asked, what this, and he goes, well, that's a giant, ghost. It obeys your commands. You can tell it just like in Abbott and Costello, how Dracula says, and that's why I fell for the Honor House. Now, when I got it, and I said the head popped, and the story goes on that, I bought the Melton Company thinking. Now, if you look at the Melton Company ad, one of the famous things about the Melton Company ad is it has two different ones. It has one where there's a ghost looking at a guy up in the air.
I remember that.
Right, like a vampire kind of monster.
Yes.
And, now, the one that has the monster like that, when you look at it really quick, especially in a comic book, it looks like a rectangular box.
Yes.
It doesn't look like there's a guy down there. So
that's right. Yeah.
What going the story there goes that when I was a kid in Cuba, I don't know, the age of 3.5, give or take, I still remember because it kind of did an impression on me. Somebody had died, and we went to the wake. Now, back in those days, they used to use glass bureau bar, like that was made of glass,
Yes,
or the top part of it. And I asked my grandfather that I wanted to look, and he raised me up in the air, and I saw the person inside the coffin, and it kind of left a mark on me. And when I saw the 7-foot ghost, and I looked at that Melton ad, somehow it gave me the impression that it came in a glass box.
Well,
you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, because when you're looking at that artwork, looking at the artwork, your imagination combined with your history and your memory would bring you to that thought.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you look at the way that the guy, the Melton Company who did that ad, he cut it out where it's rectangular, but then he cuts the corners on top and bottom, like he just chops off, I guess, because he wanted the way he placed the picture.
Sure.
So if you look at that ad, and I'll send you if you don't know which one I'm talking about, Mike.
I think I do. I think I remember.
And I thought in my mind it was coming in a glass box, and I would tell the mailman, "Hey, when you get it, let me know because it's going to be a big box like this, whatever." So I told him, but I thought it would be like a miniature glass box, not a 7-foot box.
Yeah, of course.
And I thought you would have to put it together. But anyway, here's the thing that, and this is funny though, because this was my thought, even after I received the one from the Honor House Company, that already I kind of knew what it looked like. But I was, kids are stupid. I used to think the Polaris submarine was something that I was going to drown if I bought it and I didn't know how to swim. And I thought I could actually build it and put it in my bathtub and walk inside of it.
Yes, I always wanted one of those. I always wanted one of those Polaris submarines. I always wanted one. I never got one, but it opened my imagination because I love Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and all those things. I never got one, but yeah, I know what you're thinking because we thought it was real and we thought it would really float.
Well, no, but the thing is, like, some people think I could only sit in it, but it goes back to Cuba. One day, my mom is walking from my house in Cuba and I see a little Mack truck, and in back of the Mack truck, for whatever reason, there was a steering wheel inside the dump area. Okay. Right. And my mom says those trucks, you can ride on it. Now, what she meant to say is that there were pedal cars you can ride on, but the one I was seeing was a small truck. Right. So in my mind, I thought that I would shrink and be able to fit there somehow. So that same mentality brought me when I saw the Polaris sub, I thought I could shrink, go in it, and I thought it was actually big enough to walk inside of it. It's stupid.
I did too. And I thought I did do it on my bathtub.
Okay? Yeah. Now, what I regret, getting back to the regrets, is that I realized in the 80s, as I researched, that the first company that ever sold the 7-foot ghost was actually a company called Jim Cook Productions, and they were located in Georgia, and it was sold inside of Boy's Life magazine. Okay.
Right. Yes.
He started the first time ever. I think I tracked it down to 1964 or 66. Then I realized that 2 other companies, other than Johnson Smith and Honor House and the Melton Company, were selling the same ghost. And I saw those ads later on in life, and I'm like, oh my God. I wish I had done my research, because I would love to have one of each of the ghosts, because to me the ghost was the very first item I ever ordered, and it's always going to be treasured in my heart as the best mail order item ever. And I still think it is, even over the submarine, because of the fact that it left so much for your imagination. Okay, and
I agree.
Bring on this, the Honor House ghost, when it came.
Yes.
You had the polyethylene was basically a plastic bag. I think it was I don't want to give exact measurements here, but the exact size of the bag and everything. And the reason for that is because I still sell the product, and I like people that are going to order the products to still have a little bit of an imagination. I don't want to describe the 100%, and they're like, "Oh, that's what it is," because it takes away from the fun. That's
I
why
agree.
I got the price. Now,
And
I
that
do sell.
I just say, Eddie, that polyethylene, it was so thin. It was like, when you used to get a dry cleaning bag with those really thin plastic bags, it wasn't
Actually,
like.
no, it actually was a little thicker. It was 1 mil, and it was equivalent to a tall kitchen garbage bag.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the thickness of it. And in fact, Mike, I don't know if you ever got my signed special edition 7-foot Ghost with the Johnson Smith that is signed by the Craig Tarbeck, who's actually one of the originators of the Johnson Smith Ghost, which in reality what they did is they actually copied, Johnson Smith copied the Melton Company, and so did Honor House. And they ran away with it. And Honor House copied. See, Johnson Smith was the first company in the 1970s catalog. Actually, two 1970 catalogs. They were selling the 7-foot size monsters with Boney the Skeleton and the Frankenstein. But what happened, for whatever crazy reason, and it's funny because talking to Craig about it, he doesn't know exactly when it took place or what happened. But Honor House just ripped off the ad word for word, right from the Johnson Smith catalog.
Yeah.
And what they did is they added the coupon area, and they shaped it where if you look at the actual coupon, it looks like a coffin. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you look at monster size monsters, the ad on a comic book, or anybody can Google monster size monster, the ad is going to pop up, and you can see what I'm saying. The ad is made to look like a coffin.
Yeah.
And another thing that's really interesting is when they send you Boney the Skeleton, even though Boney the Skeleton in the ad appears, and it's supposed to be the hand is down.
Right.
When they send you the actual Boney the Skeleton, he's waving. And you can see that inside the book, Mail Order Mysteries. And you're like, wait a minute. This is not the one that's pictured in the ad. But the reason is, and it's explained because I told that story to Kirk, and Kirk included it in the book, is Famous Monsters of Filmland used to sell a model kit called The Modern Man. And The Modern Man has Boney picture outside. So the picture they used for the actual ad, as they were doing the ad, they used the word modern. They used the picture from Modern Man.
Got it.
And that's why Boney looks better. And then when you get the actual Boney, which you could see my actual Boney, which I've had several in my life.
Of course.
And as the story goes, when Honor House closed down, I went down there and I was given 11 Frankensteins and 10 Bonies. I'm sorry, 11 Bonies and 10 original Frankensteins with stuff. And then, of course, I sold them on eBay and flooded eBay. Then now there's a bunch of people out there with the original products, which probably came from the originals that I had.
I see.
Boney looks great. It's off-white a little bit. It looks more cartoonish. And when you put it up in your wall, it's not a knockout. The Boney I reproduced in black and white, because what I did is I created that Boney, but it was done into black and white. It doesn't have an off-white background. It's phenomenal.
It's more vivid. Yeah.
It's vivid. But, and I'm actually going to do a video where I'm going to stand next to each of them, the Frankenstein and the Boney. I'm going to put them up so that people can realize how beautiful they look.
Cool.
And they'll be more into that. And pretty soon when we do sell, and anybody out there who's really interested in running for, the Boney the Skeleton or the 7-foot Frankenstein, if they're going to buy the Frankenstein, they can still get it through eBay. The name of the company that David uses, I think, is Prescott. Just search 7-foot Frankenstein and get it there, because we're still giving it for $89 there. When you go back into House of the Unusual and they run out, they're going to go back to $149, even under Prescott, because we're going to make them in the United States. We're not bringing them again from China. So
right.
That's an opportunity that people can actually. I might clean it up a little more and stuff but the point is that the original ad from Honor House that was just taken by Johnson Smith.
Sure.
That original ad sold for the next 10, 11 years. Like Honor House used that ad. It was one of their best items. It was phenomenal. And people kept ordering it because it was so well written. But there's another thing about
Eddie,
that.
I want to ask you a question, because it's off topic, but we're getting near the end of our talk. Question for you. And I don't have the answer. I was thinking of you last weekend because, you love robots, right? And I was watching, Decades had a marathon of Adventures of Superman. And they had the doctor on there who had that robot. And you probably remember that robot, how he squirted fire out of his nose and everything. And I thought of you and I thought, what did you think of that robot in Adventures of Superman? I mean, it was a unique look to it, really.
Well, what I think of that robot in particular, and I've been obsessed with robots ever since. I was never
I
able
know.
to get plants as a kid. If you look, I'm going to send you a picture of an 8-foot robot that I built way back in the day.
Wow.
And it looks like that particular robot from the Superman thing.
Wow.
But that tells you what I think of it, you know?
Yeah, it was an episode, and the robot was cool in that episode. I love the robot.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially when they Superman. Yeah, that actually, I think, and that's kind of funny because you have all these Shogun robots from Japan and stuff,
Right.
and I'm like, I don't like them. And
Me
people,
neither.
well, you like robots? Well, I kind of like the robots that remind me of the robots from either Lost in Space or the 1950s, and
Me
they all
too.
have the boxy look. I like the Japanese robots that were sold in the 70s and 50s that some do thousands of dollars. Now, I do have in my collection, believe it or not, original Japanese, I have 17. I have 31 robots. I have a couple of reproductions. Yes, I bought them. I paid for the Spaceman $835 for the smoking Spaceman. And then I had to get it restored. It cost me like another $150. But yes, I've paid. Today they're going for like $3,000-$4,000.
Oh, yeah.
I've bought a lot of those, and my passion for robots always is where they look like that. They look like the boxy, the Superman one, and getting to the close. And what the final thing I wanted to bring on the ad that before I close is the word awful. When it says, imagine your friends as they walk into your room and see the Frankenstein with his hand reaching out bigger than the live Frankenstein, the man.
Yes.
When they wrote the word awful, they spelled the AWFUL. They forgot to put the E there. And you know what? With that misspelling, you can't change that. Because it's a very iconic ad they ever ran,
Wow. That's interesting.
There's a lot of people don't know this stuff. But you know what I was going to tell you, though, is getting back with it, what you mentioned with robots.
Yes.
And I say to people out there, if anybody, now I know one guy I think just played me on this a couple of weeks ago. Either I know he had it because he seemed to have described the original plans I'm looking for.
Sure, yeah.
I know he had it. I think he said he was going to go to another state and get it. And then he says that I didn't get a hold of him in 2 months or 3, which, made me wonder. But the whole thing is he says he sold it in a garage sale.
Oh, my gosh.
I got to be honest. I don't know 100% of what I can put into this whole story. But I don't see a person who's being offered a lot of money for something to sell it for $10, $15.
Right.
Like I think the fact is he might have it. I think he didn't come across it. And I think what he's doing is he's hoping when he does find it, he's going to say, hey, I came across another copy.
Absolutely.
But if anybody out there can help me with this, I really would appreciate it and would take care of the person.
So what do you exactly? What is this?
I'm looking for the Melton Company or Guarantee Company, sold under both titles.
Okay.
7-foot monster robot plans. In fact, if they Google the word 7-foot monster robot plans, the Melton Company ad is going to appear like 15 times.
Right.
There's a company, some guy has I think it's some website named Pink Click or something like that. He has it on several times. There is not Instagram. What do you call that thing where you put all your photos, you post pictures?
Snapchat.
Snapchat. It's going to have it. No.
So folks, if you're out there and you hear this, you got to make Eddie's dream come true here. I mean, this is something he's dreamed of all his life. Please contact Eddie.
I've been looking for this for 47 years. It's crazy.
I know, Eddie.
It hasn't been sold anywhere. And people say, well, how do you? Well, trust me, I've been doing a religious search on eBay for the last 10 years. Right. I have like 17 with different wording for it, notifications on that anytime, and I always check it daily. Those plans have never appeared. The ones I bought the ones I bought from Abracadabra Magic Shop, not only have they appeared 3 or 4 times, even on eBay, that I've had people send me them thinking that that's the one I was looking for.
Well, someday
I'll bump
they're
it. Hopefully,
they're gonna be there, Eddie. Someday we just have to trust the people out there.
One day,
People out there listening, you've got to make this dream come true. So we'll hope that they do, Eddie.
Well, listen. Other than that, listen. It's been such a pleasure having you on today, Mike.
Always.
Like always. And people, if people haven't really been I have in your channel, I have one of your presentations that they could see that you've traveled the world. You work everywhere from Las Vegas throughout the country doing your danger magic shows. And
and by the way, Eddie, just real quick, I am at the Santa Cruz County Fair this week in Watsonville, California. I'll be here through Sunday doing both my danger magic, where I swallow razor blades, do all that crazy stuff, and my hypnosis show. So if you're in the Monterey, California area, come out and tell me you heard us on the podcast and say hello, because I'll be on the stage every day, all day, there at the fair at the Santa Cruz County Fair in Watsonville, just a little bit south of Monterey, California. And
another thing I want to finally say to people out there, be in the lookout. I'm waiting for him to call me. I got to wait for his schedule from the duo from Penn and Teller. Teller will be on in a live Zoom podcast.
Awesome.
In the near future. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to happen. I'm waiting on him. But as soon as he does, we'll have it on now. Having said that, Mike, thank you. God bless everybody and have a wonderful night.
Have a great night, folks. Thank you so much, Eddie. Bye-bye.
Bye.